All right. Good morning, everybody. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know you can hear me okay. Please. All right. Good morning. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. We can all just join palms as we begin. And repeating after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. And putting the palms down. All right. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here and showing up. That's most of the battle is just showing up. Had somebody reach out. In fact, I need to follow up with them a few weeks back, and they were struggling with recovery, and they kept talking about why they couldn't make it to the meeting. And I listened to the person give me excuse after excuse after excuse. And the challenge is when we have that mindset and that approach of the excuses, we get blocked and we're unable to really go forward. So I found with this practice, it's really a lot about moving past excuses of what we can't do and justifying why we shouldn't do things or can't do things, and just showing up and doing your best at whatever it is you're doing. So I think that positive mindset is really important, to just make sure that we don't talk ourselves out of doing things or cultivating something that's really important to us. So keep showing up, and even if some days seem better than others or worse than others, you just keep showing up. Continue to practice, continue to do your meditation, continue to study, continue to work on all the things that we talk about. And as I share very often, it's the last thing the Buddha said before he died, which is strive on with diligence. They were concerned with who was going to teach them now that he was gone. And he said, I've left you the teachings, now you must strive on with diligence. So you have all, unless you're here for the first time, but most of you who are here that I know, you've heard these teachings enough and long enough, even if you've been around them for 6 months, 3 weeks, one book, right? There's no greater knowledge or greater understanding. There's integration and implementation of these teachings. So try to embody what you hear and put it into your life in whatever way you can. Normally I start out with questions. I think I just started thinking about a friend of mine who was making excuses and got off on that rant. But I think it's an important reminder for us all to be honest with ourselves on this path. And it's like when I talk about the precepts, the basic 5 precepts of the Buddhist teachings: no lying, to refrain from lying, refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. I've been speaking on these and working on these for years, and I can't even tell you how many justifications or excuses I get from people about why they do certain things, and for me, the healthiest way to approach the precepts is to understand that these precepts, this is my approach and how I share it. These precepts are beneficial for my life, and they will be beneficial for those around me, but maybe I'm just unable to do it, as opposed to justifying why we do something and trying to make it seem like it's okay. The refrain from killing, I have years of listening to people justify why it's okay to kill, as opposed to just saying, I still choose to participate in eating meat, for example. Just at least own that. Own that choice instead of trying to justify why it's okay, or the well wishes you're sending the animal or something like that. So anyways, all right. I think we'll just go ahead and start with a meditation practice. Well, I will start with this question. Let me ask you this. I'll try to simplify it. Do you make excuses for things that you're unable to do? It's pretty much a yes or no question, but feel free to expand as much or as little as you'd like. Do you make excuses for things you are unable to do with practice? Do you make excuses for things you're unable to do with practice? All right, there we go. Tom, yes, thank you for your honesty. And the funny thing is here, and I'm not even bringing this up specifically around the precepts, that was just my example. But being that one of the 5 precepts is to refrain from lying, it also means to refrain from lying to yourself. So when you're asked questions about this, then you have to really be honest with yourself and say, okay, do I make excuses? And if so, can I be honest with that? So a challenging one for sure. Tom, yes. Benton, I'm human, so yes. Molly, yes. Jana, yes. Bill, yes. But the rationales don't take away my sense of conflict and desire to do better. Okay. Other thoughts on that? Justifying why we do things or making excuses. Something to ponder. As always, I start these mornings. I have no idea where it's going to end up or where it's going to go. So that's where we're at. So something to ponder is just the excuses that we make. And I think that's part of waking up to our own suffering, is understanding really how our thoughts and the choices we make impact our life and the life of those around us. So, all right. So with that, we will start with meditation. And I just saw Lisa, yes, especially telling myself I don't have enough time. Yeah, it's amazing how much time we waste for people who often say we have no time. So I understand. All right, so we'll start with the meditation. For those who may be joining us for the first time, welcome. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Sounds, you'll hear them. Sounds inside, outside, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. Helps if you're on a cushion, slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed, hands are on the knees or in the lap. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continuing this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, simply sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. Simply your own mind and your own mind's reaction to the world around us. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The reality is every moment of our lives, things happen and we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. All we're working on is practicing what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. And for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else. So we're simply working on closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. And that's it. I try not to complicate this practice. I've found over the years the more complications and difficult we try to make it, the more challenging it becomes. Take some time each day to sit quietly and breathe, explore your actions, and work on changing them. I find that to be challenging enough as it is. So without trying to accomplish too many things, just observe. Someone gave a talk the other day to a college group, different than the normal one, but that I do. And so these were students being introduced for the first time, most of them. And one of them said, how do you begin Buddhist practice? And I said, take the three poisons: the greed, the anger, the ignorance. And you can break it up however you want, but for example, greed. Spend the rest of the day just exploring, how am I greedy? Or spend a week, whatever amount of time you want to do. And then move on to anger. Look at anger. Spend a week or a day exploring how and where am I angry. And then ignorance, same thing. So try to spend some time just exploring the nature of your mind, because that's where all the pain and suffering exists, is in your mind, not anybody else's. No one else's mind or words or actions is your pain. Your pain is your mind. So get to know it and work on settling it. So, yes, Tom, so simple yet so difficult. So with that, I'll pause. I prefer just to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with at this time. If you are joining us for the first time, again, welcome. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Feel free to type in whatever you'd like. Meditation, Buddhist practice, and I will respond. So I'll turn it all over to you for questions. While you ponder those questions, I'll be back in about 30 seconds. Thoughts, questions? I thought I heard a dog. Is there a dog meditating with you? Yes, you did hear a dog. He's quite a great meditator. What was the Buddha's relationship like with his kids after he returned? Were they hurt he left? Good question. So the Buddha had one child. His name was Rahula. And for those who don't know, and I won't give the whole life story of the Buddha, but in brief, as a prince, growing up with all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you could imagine, he was married, had a child, and at 29 years old, he left, and he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years, and at 35, he sat down and realized the cause of suffering and spent 45 years teaching that, how to liberate from the cycle of rebirth, which is a whole another interesting point. But keep in mind that the Buddhist teachings were not about making sure you're happy. The Buddhist teachings were about liberation from the cycle of rebirth. So I'll just let you chew on that for a while. Because I know all of you showed up here this morning to make sure you don't get reborn. So he had one son, Rahula, and when he returned, and I don't know how long after, I don't know, I've never read or studied much on the relationship between the Buddha and Rahula, but the Rahula did renounce and become a monk as well. So from the limited knowledge that I have of that, my understanding and my somewhat educated guess is that they had a pretty good relationship. I'm not even sure. He was pretty young, I think, but I don't recall the age. Alex always tells the life story of the Buddha, and he knows it pretty well. I'm not even sure of the age of Rahula when he left, nor do I recall what age he became a monk. But when he returned, it was really him coming back to share the wisdom and knowledge that he had gained, or that he had awakened to, I should say, not gained, that he had awakened to. And he shared that with family and friends and everybody. So I don't know that. I think it's very difficult for us to, comprehend, especially. Well, I just think it's very difficult for us to comprehend what it would be like for the husband to leave and come back 6 years later, and have that be a healthy relationship. I don't know that we can comprehend what that would be like. And to me, there's an example of how much wisdom the Buddha realized that he was able to um, have a healthy relationship, again, from my understanding. But I'll look into it, and if I find out anything contrary to that, um, I will share that with you all. But, and the question of where they hurt, he left. Again, that's where I don't know the age of Rahula. But, his wife obviously woke up in the morning. I mean, that's the story, is that they kissed them in the middle of the night. They'd had a grand party. They had fallen asleep. And he kissed her in the middle of the night, and then he left. So she woke up and he was gone. Again, my educated guess there is whether he became the Buddha and awakened or not. I'm pretty sure that someone who wakes up and their spouse has just left is probably not too happy. But again, I have not studied in depth that relationship or that dynamic. Yep. And she also, the wife, I believe, renounced and became a nun as well. His mother, the Buddha's mother, died at birth, and he was raised by his aunt. So I know there's some books out there, and it's escaping me right now. But there are some books out there that I've come across, and I'll try to find it and I'll share it next time, that explore a little more about the relationships of his wife and mother, or aunt, I should say, who raised him. So those are just some thoughts on that, Molly. Benton, wonder what your take is on this observation: hurt people hurt other people. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that before. I've heard it quite a bit, and it makes perfect sense to me. If we are in pain and we are suffering, it's going to be really difficult to bring joy and love to others. So when we are hurt, we will kind of continue with that, karmic, that thread of I'm in pain, I'm suffering, so now I'm going to bring you my pain and my suffering. If I think of my practice over the years and moments where I would have been upset or angry or something to that effect, then that's the world I'm bringing to everybody, is that anger or that being upset. If I'm joyful and I'm happy and I'm feeling kind and compassionate, then that's what I'm bringing. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. And I often, when I talk about having compassion for those who've harmed us, that's, I don't know if I've used that metaphor or not myself, even though I'm very aware of it, but that's in essence what I'm talking about when I say when other people do things that harm, that we respond to and we feel harmed by, it's to understand that they're hurting. And that's why they've done what they have done. So it helps, I think, to understand and have compassion for others, that they too are hurting. So, all right, Martina. Yes, I make excuses, silly stuff sometimes. Good to be with you all and consider our human vulnerabilities. Thanks, Jeff. You're welcome, Martina. Yeah, excuses. We are just filled with them. Jana, where does our consciousness go when we leave our bodies? So here's a simple one. Let me just clarify this for you, where our consciousness goes. So the teaching that I received on rebirth, this was when I was living in the monastery, and there was a Buddhist monk, and he taught a lot about rebirth and life and death. And a couple things he said that I'll share with you is that the mistake that we make is that we think that this is one life and that this physical form, Jeff, is going to die and then is going to be reborn. He said that the wisdom view is to understand that there is no death, there is no birth. And this is, Thich Nhat Hanh is got quotes out there everywhere and teaches on this a lot, but no birth, no death. That it's one endless, big, long life. We, as humans, we break them up by this physical form, and we attach and we give this kind of label as, I am Jeff, this is my life, and I was born, and then I'm going to die, and that's it. Even if consciousness goes on, we still tend to break them up as individual lives. And again, this monk was saying that's not the correct view. The correct view is to understand that there's a consciousness that continues on, and these physical forms are just labels we've given called life, and we've given each physical form with a consciousness a name. And so we think Jeff is born and then Jeff will die. Again, Thich Nhat Hanh, no birth, no death, because the consciousness continues. Coming to your question specifically, is that, and also let me just preface everything I'm saying about this for those who may be brand new. When the Buddha was alive and when he was teaching to a culture and a way of seeing the world that they all believed in rebirth. So if the Buddha was going to give a discourse on rebirth, there were not people sitting there thinking like, oh, that's crazy. They all believed in rebirth. Now, if he'd given a discourse on having one life, then going to heaven or hell, then they probably would have thought he was crazy. Fast forward to today, and we all grow up, for the most part, not all of us. I don't know what your beliefs are, but most people in Western culture, and most people I see at the Dharma Bum Temple grow up thinking that I have this one life, and then I'm going to die, and I'm going to go to heaven, or I'm going to go to hell, and that's it. And so it's important to understand that the Buddha didn't have to convince people about rebirth. He didn't create rebirth. He didn't make it up. It's what the Hindus believed in their spiritual practice and their religious views. So again, now coming back to your question about where does consciousness go, there's what's called the alaya vijnana, which means storehouse consciousness. It's a collection of our karma. So all of our thoughts, all of our words, all of our actions are this endless stream of consciousness. The alaya vijnana is the storehouse that holds all of this karma. It's like, our entire life on a little flash drive. That's consciousness. Okay. And when we die, again, this is the teaching that I received, is that when our physical body dies, right, our consciousness leaves the body. Again, coming back to your question, where does the consciousness go? The consciousness leaves the body. It goes into what's called the Bardo stage. Tibetan Buddhism teaches a lot about the Bardo stage. And it is said that somewhere within 49 days, usually on the 7th day of a 49th day, so 7, 14, 21, etc., that our consciousness then will take form, will return to physical form. So you have sperm, you have egg, you have that coming together, you have your consciousness that then enters, and boom, you have life. So the consciousness stays with you, what we call physical form. It leaves and goes into the Bardo stage. I always think of it as like this, just kind of like this parking lot where the consciousness is just waiting. It's just kind of sitting. It's like, going to the airport and you're sitting in the cell phone lot waiting to get the phone call to go pick somebody up, right? So the consciousness is just sitting in the cell phone lot waiting. And then the plane arrives, person gets off, and then boom, you get the call. For me, I wasn't raised with this view, right? It's not anything that I can make sense of or that I can, logically see happening, or anything I even can comprehend. But my personal view is I believe the Buddha was brilliant, and I think that 95% of what he teaches and that I've learned, I agree with 100%, 1,000%. So just because 5% of what he taught, which is around rebirth and things like that, don't make sense to me, I'm not going to rule it out and say it's not true. For me, I'm all in. I believe that what he was teaching and the way the world saw things back then, that just makes more sense to me personally. as a Jewish kid who got into Buddhism 18 years ago, to me, it makes more sense that there's a stream of consciousness that will continue. No birth, no end, no birth, no death, no beginning, no end. Nagarjuna is a 4th century philosopher, and he's an incredible teacher on this. Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way is his text. Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna. His teachings help me understand this a little bit more. But for me, this continuation of consciousness and this physical form coming together and then, ceasing to exist, known as the body, that to me makes way more sense than like, I'm going to die and then go to heaven or go to hell. I just don't, that doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me that there's like some God out there waiting to invite me into his kingdom or whatever all that is. I don't get that. And when the Buddha was teaching 500 years before Christ to a population of people who are Hindu and believes in gods and goddesses, those views, if I'm going to pick one, make way more sense to me than this kind of current view. So hope that's helpful, explaining exactly where our consciousness goes when it leaves the body. Lisa, can you share a little bit about the Buddha's diet? Yeah, it's a relatively simple question or simple response. So as when he renounced, right, 29, he leaves home and he goes into the forest and, he cuts off his beautiful hair and he gets rid of all his princely clothes and he takes a bunch of rags and sews them together into his one robe. And he had 7 items. He had his robe. He had a razor to shave his head. He had a stone to sharpen the razor. He had a bowl to beg with. He had a sifter. So when they took water out of the stream, they didn't kill any bugs. So he had 7 items, a needle, I don't know if I said that, but, and to sew the robe. And they did what's called an alms round. I think they're actually starting to open up again. I'm not sure, but you can go up to a place like Meadow Forest Monastery and participate in their alms round, which is really beautiful, where the monks go begging for food. And so this is honoring the tradition of the Buddha. And so at the time of the Buddha, when they would go, they'd wake up in the morning, then they would go out begging for food. They would put their head down and the bowl up. And whatever was put in the bowl, each of them, when they would all come back, they would gather around and they would split up what was there and they would eat it. So that's why I say it's a simple answer. The simple answer is his diet consisted of whatever was given to them to eat. Then the next question is always or often, well, people say, and this is part of the excuses I was getting at earlier, people justify and say, well, the Buddha ate meat, so that's why I eat meat. So let me explain to you what happened with the Buddha when they were given food that was meat or fish or whatever it was, right? He said that there were 3 conditions that if any sort of meat or fish or anything had been served to them, if they didn't see it be killed, if they didn't hear it be killed, and if it wasn't killed specifically for them, then they would take the offering and they would eat that. But if they saw it killed, heard it be killed, or it was killed specifically for them, then they would refuse that offering. And metaphors is the same way. Whatever food gets put in the bowl, they'll eat it. And the reason, again, this is obviously all my personal views, but I don't like that I don't agree with that justification when people say, well, the Buddha ate meat. If we're roaming through a Vons, we got a million things we can pick and choose to eat. If we're sitting there on, Amazon Prime now or whatever we're using to get foods during a pandemic, right? There's a million things we can pick and choose and order. That's very different than head down, bowl up, begging for food once a day. So he ate what was given to him. Which is one of my practices that I often share with people, for those who haven't heard it, is, and this is a practice that I think really kind of ties together a lot of the practices the Buddha was teaching. One of them is about just eating whatever is given to you. Another is about our greed and our attachment and our cravings and our desires. But, next time, and again, maybe many of you aren't going out to restaurants yet, And so don't know how this would apply on like Postmates or something like that. But the challenge I throw out to people is, when you go to a restaurant, let's say you spend $15 for lunch or $20, whatever it is, you have your limit. And if you have dietary restrictions, if you're a vegetarian or gluten-free or whatever it might be, right, sit down at the table. And when the person taking your order comes over, tell the person, I'd like to spend $15, whatever amount you spend, and just bring me something to eat. And they're going to look at you kind of funny, like, well, what do you want? And just say, it's up to you. Here's $15, bring whatever you want to eat that's vegetarian, and I'm good. And you're done. And then when the food shows up, just eat it. Again, obviously, if you have allergies, dietary restrictions, make that clear, right? If you're allergic to, I don't know, whatever, carrots, then tell them, no carrots. But try that sometime, because it'll really show you how greedy you really are. Unless, of course, you think that you like deserve something. This is my money. I earned it. I deserve to get what I want. Yes, I get that. And that mindset is exactly why you suffer. Because we have a sense of entitlement that says we deserve things, right? As opposed to just appreciating things. You might not like what was given to you, but it's food. This was again, kind of going back to monastery life, but this was a beautiful practice where we would go in and we'd sit down at the table, and everything was silent, and you had your head down like this, and you finished your prayers and all that. And then you had the bowl in front of you. And they just came by, and it was two bowls. Usually one had like a soup or some sort of liquid in it, and the other one was for the food. And you just got served, two bowls, and you had to eat everything that was in it. Now, there were many different things being served, and sometimes you get it and you're like, I really like this, but I don't really like this. And you were welcome to take more. The guidelines were that you could eat as much as you'd like. You just had to finish everything that was given to you. So if you wanted more food, you would, you don't like call the waiter or waitress over. You put the bowl out towards the end of the table, and that told the food server people that you wanted more food, and they would come by and they would put more food in it. And it was always a challenge, because maybe something in the bowl that you liked, but there's something you didn't like. So you didn't know what you were going to get again. So it's a really good practice. And then when we were done, you would take the water, you'd have a little water or teacup, and you would pour that into the bowl, and you would stir it. So there were no crumbs. There was no leftover pieces of rice or anything on the bowl. It was basically clean. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's see, one more here and I'll close. It's funny, I actually have a friend who does that sometimes, and it also connects him with the water, because the water shares his or her favorite dish. Oh, the waiter. I'm sorry. It's funny, actually. Okay, that makes much more sense now. With the waiter, because the waiter shares, yeah. And that's probably what will happen most of the times, is they're going to think, well, what do I like? And they're going to give you something that they like, And then, yes, you've shared the waiter's, favorite dish, which is kind of cool. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to close. Good questions. I appreciate it. Good luck with all that today. And anytime I point out things about precepts and eating meat or any of that type of stuff, these talks are not meant to make you feel guilty or feel bad or feel pressured, but they are meant to make you think, to at least recognize, like, look, going back to my original question, if you are someone who eats meat and fish and all that kind of stuff, at least recognize that you are participating in a system of harming, that no animal feels good when they are killed. And when we eat meat, fish, all that kind of stuff, we are basically saying that's okay. So it's not about feeling guilty or pressured, or it's just being honest and saying, this is where I'm at on my path and on my practice, and I'm just not able to stop yet. And that's fine. To me, I'd much rather have that than trying to justify, or, often people say, like, oh, I send merit to the animal that was killed. They don't want your merit. They're dead. They want it to not be killed. They want to not be killed. They want you to stop eating meat. They don't want your merit. So just be honest with the things we do around that stuff. So, all right, so we'll join palms as we close. Many merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, a couple quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So every night, different classes going on. 14 months ago, we closed due to the pandemic. So we have everything online via Zoom or YouTube. Don't know when we're opening yet again. So we'll remain closed for still a while. It is nice that we're even exploring when we'll open again. It's nice that we're talking about when we'll open again. It's just nice to be thinking that we will open again, but we're not rushing to open again. So we have a lot of people at risk in this community and in the larger community. So we're going to continue to remain cautious and conservative with that. If we waited 14 months, we can wait a few more. So I understand everybody wants us to open. I'd love for us to open as well. But I also would love to make sure that we continue to take this pandemic very seriously. People's lives are being lost to this day. And we need to be careful and very sensitive to that. So lots of stuff happening. The recovery classes are all going, the family classes, the kids classes, our new classes on our homeless hats project Sunday afternoon, knitting beanies for the people who live on the streets, as well as our new Friday night Tibetan Buddhist practice, the Tonglen meditation. If you go on the website and under programs, you'll see Tonglen meditation. And if you want to send compassion to anybody, there's a little form there. It'll take you about 20 seconds. You can fill out and do that. So still having our book study on Monday nights now, Zen Seeds. Buddha for You also still closed, but the website, as you probably all saw, is fully up and running. So anything you want, you can order online. We'll ship it out to you. So we appreciate everything. Thanks for being here. Try to ponder some of this stuff today and see what you can work on.